Okay, so on Lesson 4-4, Day 2 notes, complex numbers, we're going to continue working with what we started yesterday. So remember that I is the square root of -1, and I squared is equal to -1. Okay, so when I look at this, it says adding and subtracting complex numbers. So this is just like what you did before if this said 5 minus 7x plus 2 plus 4x. We're going to treat those as variables, but in the end, when we simplify, we know that I is the square root of -1, and I squared is -1. So 5 minus 7i plus, notice these parentheses are separated by a plus, 2 plus 4i. Remember that there's an implied 1 in front that we can distribute, which changes nothing. Remember this plus, there's an implied 1 that we can distribute, which changes nothing. So I've got plus 2 plus 4i. And then it's a matter of combining like terms, basically. You can think of it that way. So 5 plus 2, because those are both constants, is 7. And then -7i plus 4i. Think of this as -7x plus 4x. We would add our coefficients. So -7 plus 4 is -3i. Now, as long as it's just I, we leave it alone. And when we're doing it and writing it like this, we want it, I know it's a little awkward and it's backwards from what you've been taught about variables, but remember I is really not a variable, it's an imaginary number. So we leave it 7 minus 3i. We always put our I in back. Okay, so when we look at 4 plus 6i minus -1 plus 2i, remember this is separated by a minus right here, so we're going to distribute our 1. So 4 plus 6i. Here we're going to distribute a -1. Remember when we distribute a negative, it changes the sign, so this will be plus 1 minus 2i. And then we go back and clean it up and combine our like terms. So we have 4 plus 1, which is 5, and then 6i minus 2i would be 4i, and we leave it just like that. Okay, so as long as it's just I, you leave it alone. If it's I squared, that's when we have to convert that to the -1. Okay, so -2 plus 5i plus 3 times 1 minus 7i. So remember we're doing PEMDAS, so the first thing we have to do is get rid of these parentheses by multiplying by -1. So -2 plus 5i. To get rid of this set of parentheses, I multiply by positive 3. 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 times -7i is -21i. From there, again, we combine like terms. -2 plus 3 is 1. 5i minus 21i is -16i, so 1 minus 16i. Okay, so that's adding and subtracting. So basically, notice that there was a plus or a minus in between our sets of parentheses, and we had to distribute whatever was in front of the parentheses. Now, down here it says multiplying complex numbers, and notice the directions still say simplify. But when I look at this, I see no adding and subtracting in between. So this is 6 minus 8i times 9 plus 2i. So this is when we can do FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. Remember, first, outer, inner, and last. Okay, so when I do this, you can do FOIL, or you could do the window pane method. Okay, so FOIL, we multiply first term in each set of parentheses for first. Okay, 6 times 9 is 54. Outer, we do the 2 outermost. So 6 times 2i, 6 times 2i is 12i. Inner, we do the 2 on the insides. So negative 8i times 9 would be negative 72i. And then last, you would do the last term in each set of parentheses. So negative 8i times 2i would be negative 16i squared. Okay, so we're going to have to come back and do something with that I squared in just a moment. Okay? So when I look at this, I have some like terms here that I can combine. So 54, 12i minus 72i would be negative 60i minus 16i squared. Now, remember I said that it was okay to leave the I but not the I squared, because we know I squared is equal to negative 1. So this is like saying negative 16 times negative 1, which would make it a positive 16. So then we have 54 minus 60i plus 16. Well, I can combine those because now these two are like terms. So 54 plus 16 is 70, and then bring down your minus 60i. Okay? So when you look at number 5, same thing. I'm multiplying negative 5i plus 2i times 3 plus 3i. Notice the difference between this and what was above. There's no plus or minus. It's saying multiply this whole thing times this whole thing. Now, remember the window pane method. The window pane method, if we multiply negative 5 times 2i and 3 plus 3i. Remember, we're going to multiply like our times table. We're going to multiply 3 times negative 5, which is negative 15. Here, we would multiply 3i times negative 5, which is negative 15i. Here, we would do 3 times 2i, which is 6i. And here, we would do 3i times 2i, which is 6i squared. Okay? So, remember that we can combine our like terms. So I have 6i and negative 15i. So I have negative 15. 6i plus negative 15i would be negative 9i plus 6i squared. Remember, I squared will become a times negative 1. So that's going to become minus 6. So negative 15 minus 9i minus 6. And then we have like terms at negative 15 and negative 6. So negative 21 minus 9i. Okay, so number 6. Again, we're multiplying a binomial times a binomial. So you could use either the window pane or FOIL, whichever one you like better. If I do FOIL first, 4 times 1 is 4. Outer. 4 times negative 3i is negative 12i. Inner, negative 5i times 1 is negative 5i. Last, negative 5i times negative 3 is positive 15i squared. So I have 4. My like terms of negative 12i and negative 5i is negative 17i plus 15i squared. But remember, I squared is negative 1, so this becomes 4 minus 17i minus 15. And then I can combine my like terms of 4 and negative 15, which gives me negative 11 minus 17i. Okay? Now, number 5. In an AC circuit, the voltage V, so V is voltage, the current C, so C is current, and the impedance L are related by the formula, I'm sorry, not L, I, impedance is I, formula V equals C times I. Find the voltage, so I'm finding V, if the current, so this is C, 2 plus 4i amps, and impedance 9 minus 3i ohms, so this is I. So I'm going to multiply C times I. V equals C times I. So C is 2 plus 4I, and I'm going to multiply that by I, which is 9 minus 3I ohms. So if I multiply those, I get my voltage, and now I'm back to what we were doing up here. So let's do this one. Since I did this one in foil, we'll do this one with window pane. So 2 plus 4I times 9 minus 3I. So when I multiply these, again, it's like a multiplication table. 9 times 2 is 18. Negative 3I times 2 is negative 6I. 9 times 4I is 36I. And negative 3I times positive 4I is negative 12I squared. So then we go back. I've got like terms right here. So I have 18 plus 30I minus 12I squared. Again, what is I squared? Negative 1. So negative 12 times negative 1 will be positive 12. So 18 plus 30I plus 12. And then I have like terms at 18 and 12, which gives me 30 plus 30I. And it's voltage, so it's volts. Okay, so you can go ahead and do the day 2 assignment for 4-4 and its exit question.